Welcome back. We're live here from Buckingham Palace. Jacinta Price has pointed out that when someone dies during sorry business, the dead are to be respected. Here was Jacinta on this very program on Wednesday.
In traditional Aboriginal culture, we actually respect people during the mourning period. We call this sorry business time, and we allow for the family to go through their mourning period and we show our respect.
And let's, of course, share the Indigenous rugby league player Caitlin Moran, who used derogatory terms to describe the Queen in an Instagram post that most people, found offensive. Now, while the NRL announced on Tuesday they plan on banning Moran for one match, which equates to 1/5 of the NRL's women's season, the media left, those who wanted to punish Israel Folau, well, they were up in arms, horrified at her treatment. Moran's post was just one of the issues discussed last night on the ABC's flagship panel program, Q&A. The episode called Royalty, a Republic and Truth-Telling. Here's just a taste of what went where on the national broadcaster, which is hell-bent on having a Republican debate even before Her Majesty is buried. And pay particular attention here to the defence of Moran's words. Apparently her slur was just political speech, we're told, and we took all those words too literally.
Tonight, taking the gloves off on the discussion about the death of the Queen, asking your hard questions on colonisation, the Republic, truth-telling, and is King Charles right for the role?
In the wake of the Queen's death, we've seen a lot of people's protests effectively silenced, whether it be by the police in the United Kingdom or, in the case of Caitlin Moran's Instagram post, by the NRL.
Caitlin Moran, of course, who plays for the NRLW, and I apologise for those who may be offended at the language that she used. She described the Queen in her post as a dumb dog. Simon, should someone be suspended from playing sport because of that?
No. What she was doing was expressing a view through social media, and there's absolutely no duty that one has to respect an individual's role, and I think she was talking about the institutional role here rather than the natural person.
So it's definitely political speech, and therefore it should be protected, and I think it's absolutely shameful that they've come down on her like this, and it speaks to a double standard. I think there's no question that part of why they've come down so hard on her is because she's a First Nations woman.
What concerns me about the comments by the panel is that none of them have been able to bring themselves to say that it was in poor taste, it was obnoxious, it was completely out of step with the public sentiment.
I was watching the AFL last Friday, and for those who saw it, it started with a welcome to country, followed by a minute's silence for the Queen, followed by a rendition of God Save the King, and directly followed by the national anthem. And my jaw kind of dropped because the Crown represents the colonisation of the very country that we were being welcomed to, and it just was, so confronting for me.
It's extraordinary. I mean, Israel Folau quotes the Bible and he gets banned, and she can say all of that, and there's the defence. Poor old Erica Bess, I tell you, that's taking one for the team to front up to Q&A. Sophie Elsworth, media writer for The Australian, joins us now. Well, Sophie, thank goodness you've watched Q&A, so none of my audience had to. I certainly watched snippets of it, didn't watch the whole lot. What stood out for you?
Well, a couple of things really stood out for me, Peter. The first, the timing of this. I mean, did the national broadcaster really need to be having this discussion when the Queen hasn't even had her state funeral? We're days away from that and they're discussing this topic. I thought the timing was pretty poor. And also the panel itself. I mean, there were 4 panellists on there that were clearly in favour of a republic and were anti-monarchy. And then, as you said, Erica Betts was the token Conservative on there, pushing the cause for the monarchy. So I thought it was clearly a stacked panel. And again, the timing, I just think, why couldn't they have at least waited until the funeral had occurred?
Oh, absolutely right. And I think this will come to it a bit later on, but this is almost like the ABC helping the cause of those who want arrangements to stay the same. I mean, this is pushing people away from the Republican cause, I'd have to say, going on what I know of polling. You're a bit of an eagle-eyed seasoned Q&A viewer. You recognised one of the panellists, didn't you?
I did, Peter. Indigenous lawyer Teela Reid was on there. Now, she also appeared back last year when they were discussing issues with Israel Folau. Let's take a look at that grab.
Each to their own in terms of religion and experiences and expression, but it shouldn't come at a cost where someone is feeling the hate.
So, Peter, it's really quite remarkable. We see Teela's comments there. She was on the panel last night basically saying the treatment of Caitlin Moran was shocking and that Indigenous women shouldn't be policed with their speech. This is in stark contrast to what she just said in relation to Israel Folau. I'm scratching my head how they can be all defensive for Caitlin Moran, but when it comes to Israel Folau, it appears to be quite the opposite.
Well, and as Jacinta Price said on my program this week, I mean, she said that Indigenous people, it's a great sense of pride that during sorry business they show respect. And you know, we're often asked as non-Indigenous Australians to pay appropriately the same respect during those moments. So why the double standard when it comes to the Queen?
Well, it's just unbelievable, Peter, that the national broadcasters seem to think it's okay that we just forget about that and we can talk about the Queen in poor taste, really. I mean, they did, Stan Grant, the host, did repeat those comments, really, I think, quite offensive comments that Caitlin Moran posted on her social media account. Can't we just wait to have these discussions until we've had the funeral? But the ABC seem to be pushing this cause to move to a republic, and the timing of this was just off, in my view.
And look, it's not the only issue. During the week, there was a poll on the 9 newspapers, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, about whether or not the picture of the Queen, which will now be King Charles, on the $5 note should be replaced. Now, over 90% of those polled said no, leave it as it is. But that poll disappeared pretty quickly off the front page of the SMH and The Age websites.
Well, the poll did disappear, and there were screen grabs that I had of the poll. There were over 350,000 votes at one point saying that King Charles should be on the note, but it disappeared. So, and then they wrote a story about the results of the poll, but there were no statistics included in it. It seems like they didn't like the results of the poll, so they didn't publish them. It was just bizarre. I mean, who writes a news story about a poll, Peter, but doesn't include the actual polling results? It's utterly bizarre.
I think my audience are smart. They know where this is being pushed, absolutely. PM Governor-General set off from Australia on Thursday. We expect them to land here Friday night. And then there's a whole series of events in London ahead of the funeral, obviously, on Monday. Packed flights. A lot of Australians obviously were invited, asked to join the Prime Minister on the plane. Chris Waller didn't have COVID, or doesn't have COVID. Invited to the funeral. We know he used to speak to Her Majesty about horse racing almost once a week. He's not going, though. Why?
It appears that one of his family members had contracted COVID, so he's now not going, Peter, which is incredibly disappointing. And I think it comes back to this whole situation. Have we moved on from COVID? But it appears that we haven't. So he'll be, unfortunately, missing out on attending.
What did you make of the story about VC recipient Ben Roberts-Smith? It would appear he's the only one not on the Prime Minister's plane.
Well, it was very interesting that he wasn't on there. Obviously, he's the subject of those defamation proceedings against 9 newspapers. But then he arrived at Heathrow and he appeared to lose his bundle because his chauffeur hadn't arrived. I mean, first world problems in my view, Peter. Has he ever heard of the Heathrow Express or jump on the New Elizabeth line? It'll take you straight into Paddington Station. But his chauffeur didn't arrive. He's arrived there by commercial flight and then he's got pretty hot under the collar and annoyed, and then he's ended up jumping in a taxi, muttering a few words. He wasn't very happy about the situation. So there's a few people raising their eyebrows of whether it's appropriate or not he is even attending the funeral, Peter.
Yeah, but he hasn't been charged with anything. The defamation trial is a civil matter. We don't have a decision in yet. Yeah, I know there's a long backstory here, but innocent till proven guilty, I think, Sophie.
Absolutely, Peter. It should be the case in any situation like this. I think it's obviously a hot media story, given that defamation trial that the verdict hasn't been handed down yet. But he is a Victoria Cross recipient, and that is one of the reasons he is there. So he's well within his rights to go there. But obviously, there's huge media interest in Ben Roberts-Smith as a result of these ongoing proceedings, Peter.
Sophie Elsworth, appreciate your insights and taking one for the team last night with Q&A. Thank you for joining us.